Okay, here it is. We're going to rank Death Battle Season 10's episodes, all of them, yes, all of them, by fairness, under the Death Battle Zone logic. Do I even need to go over the rules? It seems the only people who pay attention to them are the people competent enough to know better than to be stupid and comment something dumb. Anyway, this is going off what Death Battle said in their episodes. No feats or scaling taken from outside sources, only details such as where an unspecified level of power such as vaguely mountain level would be considered if not specified in the episode, okay? Let's just get to it. Somehow, even now, we have an episode that's wrong by its own logic, and this is one I do have to take time explaining because it's not immediately obvious. It's Martian Manhunter vs Silver Surfer. Let's start with pure stats. In terms of attack potency and durability, fuck, there's a car that just started outside that's not helping. Let's start with pure stats. In terms of attack potency and durability, Martian Manhunter was listed as being able to survive a punch from Perpetua without anything more than a bloody nose. And they noted her as the creator of the multiverse. Speed was listed as being able to think within a Planck instant, the shortest span of time possible, and match Superman flying beyond infinity. Silver Surfer was put at Universal, having survived slamming into the Big Bang, and the power Cosmic being able to span across the universe. Ignore this because they never once state how strong they consider the Infinity Gems, so it's meaningless. Surfer was also placed at Beyond Infinite Speed. So clearly, based on the given stats of the episode, Surfer was equivalent in speed, but much weaker. Universal compared to multiversal, with all their hacks mostly evening out, except for regeneration. See, people like to argue that Surfer was given better regeneration in this episode. No. Martian Manhunter's regeneration was placed at regenerating from being disintegrated into nothing. Atomic levels, just nothing left. Basically that. Silver Surfer was only placed at being able to survive being smashed into pieces. Pieces, that's all they say. They literally say their regeneration is equal while showing a scan that in no way indicates that for the Surfer. I don't even know how you managed to muck up showing Silver Surfer's insane regeneration. It's less impressive than what they gave Deadpool, honestly. Even if regen was somehow equal, which is the best you could argue with the episode's own logic, not that Surfer's is better, they still had Manhunter at multiversal compared to universal. And I don't want to hear, well, they explained that the power Cosmic wins. Because they literally just said, the power Cosmic wins because it can do anything, without any proper examples of it doing anything that Manhunter was not given a resistance to. Beyond, like, fire. So Martian Manhunter was placed as stronger, was given better regeneration feats, and was equivalent in speed and hacks. But they gave the win to Surfer in the episode because power Cosmic, which is the meme, but not what you're actually supposed to do. Like, at least with Wally West, they gave examples and feats and stuff to back up the meme of, it's Speed Force, I ain't gotta explain. They didn't do that here. Anyway, enough of that. Scooby-Doo vs. Courage the Cowardly Dog. They bloody explained well how they can't, like, kill each other and stuff. They scale to one another. I don't think I need to really go over this one. Scooby and Courage literally drawn in the episode. By the episode's own logic, it's as close as it gets. Phoenix vs. Raven is next, and it's not a particularly big shock, I imagine. Just like the last Cosmic Unga Bunga Marvel DC episode with magical big booty bitches we got, Phoenix vs. Raven, the Battle of the Best Hair Colors, was a pretty balanced affair. The only reason it's not most balanced is because Scooby Courage was deemed a draw, while Phoenix Raven was deemed to be a matchup where the only outcome other than a stalemate is Raven destroys Phoenix's soul and that's it. In terms of stats, both are scaled to all the creation and the Omniverse and faster than fast. Both had a lot of the same abilities, and it really just came down to Raven's specialty in messing with souls, something that, according to the episode, the Phoenix Force could not protect Jean from, and also would take months at best to recover from itself. So yeah, that's that one. Rick Sanchez versus the Doctor. Much like the previous one, stats for this episode were generally pretty even. Both were given just like human-level physical strength and technology capable of reaching universal destruction. It was more so a matter of technology than physicality, and between this and Phoenix vs. Raven, it was a bit hard at first to gauge what was a bigger blowout, but to me, the factor here is that they really go into how the Doctor doesn't just counter Rick's tech, but basically makes it worthless. They go into how the Doctor overcomes Rick in pretty much everything other than physical stats, with the exception of firepower. But firepower only in the sense of the deadly and ability of the weapons, as opposed to the raw power of them. In which case, the Doctor was simply better. Better tech, better weaponry, better vehicles, more experience. It was heavily leaned in the Doctor's favor, more than Raven had in her court. Not a huge gap, but a noticeable one. But now we can start getting into some numbers. Number 12 is a bit crazy because we are already at one of the biggest stomps of all time. That is the stomp between the pacing of this segment and the sponsor of this video, GFuel. Are you a gamer? Do you ever find yourself tired? Well, that's why you need GFuel, officially scaling to high out of Versal on Versus Battle Wiki. Did I already make this joke before? GFuel contains at least one higher dimension over infinity for each of the following: 0 sugar, 0 carbs, 0 calories, and endless transcendencies matching the amount of antioxidants featured. Available in 50 flavors, each one adding another layer of dimensional tiering in both tub and can forms that could each on their own solo DC Comics, GFuel is your all-in-one cheat code to winning and versus debating. It is actually so powerful that it contains caffeine, meaning it is inappropriate for those under the age of 18 and should be drunk responsibly. Right now, you can even snag the new remastered watermelon mint flavor. According to Pumpkins, it's fun for the whole family. Quickly head to the link in the description and use code BLOODRIGHT to get it, because if you don't, I'll nerf your favorite franchise into the ground until it loses to the deep in a fist fight. Number 12. When it comes to stat gaps, Darth Vader vs Obito Uchiha has one of the absolute smallest ones you've ever gotten. As of now, in fact, it is only bigger than TJ Combo vs Balrog by a very small margin. Both were placed as directly comparable to lightspeed attacks, and both were given a bunch of abilities, though in this regard, Vader's did not compare. Vader was given, he can crush Obito with the Force, and that's it. And that's not exactly viable given the fact that that would require Vader to be much stronger than Obito for that to be an instant win, which he wasn't, you'll see. Obito was given the ability to rip Vader's soul out, he could also use Kamui to avoid all damage, regenerate much beyond what Vader could do, one-shot with truth-seeking orbs and send him to the Kamui dimension, so Obito had a boatload of advantages. But when only measuring physical ability, Vader was placed at 12 septillion tons of TNT, scaling to the goated Ewok's feet, and Obito at 13 septillion tons of TNT, making Obito 1.08 times more powerful than Darth Vader. Number 11. For people who said that Gojo vs Marima was a stomp, it's pretty funny that this one actually has one of the closer gaps here. Though I guess that's fair given that people just couldn't agree on who was stomping. First off, abilities went Gojo's way. They basically said that Gojo is immune to at best and resists at worst Makima's entire shtick, and could annihilate all of the goons. Makima was placed faster, Mach 486 over Mach 284.4, so a 1.9 times advantage to her, but in terms of sheer power, Makima only got 413 kilotons of TNT scaling to the Typhoon Devil Storms, while Gojo got 832 kilotons of TNT from scaling to Jogo's City Shattering Meteors. Thus, Gojo was placed at 2.01 times more powerful than Makima. Not a huge gap, but this season doesn't actually have too many huge ones, and when they do come about, I'm always accused of making up numbers, so I'll live. Number 10.
Hey, I'm going to be stepping in for this one real quick since Nemso doesn't want to watch Frieza vs Megatron, but he would also rather avoid people pestering him about it in the comments. Megatron in this episode is stated to fight the Decepticon, empowered by an entire universe. While Frieza massively upscales from the time that Goku, during his first fight as a Super Saiyan God, clashed with the God of Destruction Beerus and created shockwaves which threatened to destroy the entirety of Universe 7, a cosmological structure 13 times larger than our own universe. This one does need a few clarifications made about it. Firstly, this was before the new Goku vs Superman revised the size of Universe 7, and since we can only refer to information presented in this episode, we can't factor in that updated size. They also don't clarify exactly how much stronger they think Frieza is, since the multipliers weren't necessary to justify his win, which also means we can't make any assumptions and put the gap at any larger than 13 times without looking to other episodes for reference. And with a speed gap of hundreds of thousands of times the speed of light versus hundreds of quadrillions of times the speed of light, this meant that Megatron was never landing his antimatter attack, which was his only win con, while Frieza only really needed to land one attack. He was defeating the Decepticons with this one.
Number 9. Cole vs Alex. The funniest part of this one is that Cole vs Alex was criticized for being too big of a stomp for Death Battle to do, with people saying it'd be the biggest stomp of the season. It's barely in the top 10, and the gap really isn't nearly that big in the grand scheme of Death Battle. First off, in speed, Cole was placed at 90% the speed of light from rerouting the electrical signals traveling through a wire, while Alex was placed at being able to process absorbed memories at 66% the speed of light, making Cole 1.5 odd times faster, something like that. In raw power though, Alex was scaled to a 450 kiloton nuclear blast, while Cole was placed as comparable to Mr. Beast, which wasn't given a number. Thankfully though, earlier, Cole converting a bullet into energy was placed as 7.3 megatons of TNT. Thus, Cole was placed as 16.2 times more powerful than Alex, along with resisting basically all of his abilities and being able to bypass his regeneration with atomic level destruction. Number 8. Kila vs Mikasa Ackerman is hilarious, because it's an episode where they try to convince you that either could have won regardless of the power gap, but that's... Kila was placed at the speed of lightning, and if you're wondering, the header of lightning, which is the part that actually moves and not the return stroke, which is the flash, is about 270,000 miles per hour. In other words, he was the slowest character this season aside from Guts and Demitri. That's just really fucking funny to me. Imagine your whole thing is being fast and you're getting blitzed by Rick fucking Sanchez. And also Rinasaka, who was placed at light speed. Light is 3 times faster than the return stroke of lightning, and 2,483 times faster than where they placed Killua at the speed of lightning itself. And in terms of attack potency, the conclusion gives them their best potential scaling, putting Killua at 18 megatons of TNT via scaling to Yoopie Whoopie. But they put Accelerator's punching bag at scaling to hundreds of megatons of TNT, 333 of them in fact. This puts actual Who's output at 18.5 times more powerful than Killua. I will also note there is a dubiously mentioned upscaling that would put Killua at 51 megatons in TNT. That would still pull him at 6.5 times weaker, which would drop this to number 10 if you want to use that instead, that's up to you. Number 7. This one is really hard to measure. Stitch and Rocket were both given one-shotting potential, which we're gonna say cancels out. Now if we didn't, Stitch was placed at universe level, noted to be more powerful than 2 universe-destroying aliens, while Rocket's physical strength was like city block level, so by that metric we could put it higher. It would be put at number 5 on this list. But Rocket was given weapons that could harm fellows that shake the multiverse, so I think this one and its placement depends on speed. The speed gap being Rocket placed at 2,666 times out of light, at least his equipment was, and Stitch piloting that ship was at 1,000,000 times the speed of light, making Stitch 375 times faster. But because I know some people like the huge numbers, before we get into the top 4 above where this would be, I'll put in a special mention for how big the gap in power is if we measured Stitch's physicals against Rocket's physicals. Number 6. This was almost a surprise to me, but not really. Guts vs Demitri was a complete blowout. Something that's hilarious given that the Fire Emblem community adamantly believes that their man should have been folded like an A4. So in speed they actually gave Guts the advantage, scaling to a Mach 146 lightning dodge compared to Demitri placed at Mach 60, making Guts around 2.43 times faster. But in terms of power, well, Guts scaling to that big ass storm was placed at 687 kilotons of TNT, but Demitri, scaling to a single Javelin of the Light, was put at 3.27 gigatons of TNT, which was a gap of 4,759.8 times in Dimitri's favor. Don't worry about this number, this is using exactly 3 gigatons while I use the more specific 3.27 in my calculation, so this is also correct. Rip Guts, I guess. Number 5. Here comes the biggest numerical gap, and it's the first episode in the season. Ant-Man vs. Atoms is easy to miss. I don't blame anyone for doing so. Raymond was placed at star level with his attack. However, Hank was placed at universal, as Pym particles are you can see what it says. It just puts him on the level of universe busting. I know they also put him at like beyond all that with overspace stuff, but the way they describe it makes it clear they do not consider that as an attack potency thing, as the idea of him punching Raymond from overspace isn't really brought up. Anyway, using the baseline for both, that makes Hank 496 quindecillion, 223 quattrodecillion, 430 tredecillion times more powerful than Raymond. Get ratioed, bozo. Anyway, before we get to the real number 4, you ready for some silliness? Remember Stitch Rocket? Well, if we measured this just on Stitch's physical ability against Rockets, which I would not blame you for doing, that would put Stitch at universal against city block level Rocket, which at best for Rocket makes Stitch 675 quattrovigantillion, 191 trevigantillion, 200 unvigantillion times more powerful than Rocket. For comparison, since we started this new wave of going season by season with least to most fair, or most to least fair actually, the only episodes with a number that high of the seasons we've covered, which are 1 to 4 plus 9 and this one, are Chuck vs Segata and Pokemon vs Digimon from season 2. So if you want to go about it this way, which I think is fair, big number, very big. Number 4, Skyrim vs Dark Souls. Going in here, we are dealing with numerics beyond infinity. Not numerics at all, I guess. And I think at this point, you can order these around honestly however you fucking want due to the nebulousness of the concept of bigger infinity than yours. This is just my opinion, and more than anything, I'm okay with disagreements here, as long as people aren't wankers about it. So, Skyrim vs Dark Souls. This would be the biggest stomp of them all by their own logic if we ignored the next 3 on this list. And I don't mean of the season, I mean much bigger than Fate vs Stranger's Infinity vs Not Infinity, and Goku vs Superman 2's Infinity vs Not Infinity, and Thor vs Vegeta's Infinity vs Not Infinity, and bigger than Trunks vs Silver's Bigger Infinity versus your much smaller Infinity, because in this case, it's Dark Souls with 1 Infinity, and Skyrim with infinite infinities. Silver's power advantage over Trunks was, I have more infinity than you. Skyrim's is being infinite infinities, infinite of them, above Dark Souls. via the lore statements and comparing the powers of Alduin with the First Flame. It's honestly obscene how far the gap is, and that's not the biggest one here. This season broke the record for biggest stomp by its own logic 4 times! And let's go on to the former number 1 that came out after this one, I guess. Number 3. Bill Cipher vs Discord at first doesn't seem too bad, but the more you look into the corner boxes, the more you figure, oh, Discord was placed at Infinite, of course, an infinite multiverse which is indeed bigger than Dark Souls' Infinite Universe. Bill Cipher, though, they introduced dimensional tiering. I mean, it was already a thing, but it was in things like Zatanna Scarlet Witch, where it was like equal. Here, they had Bill Cipher at a bigger cosmology, due to having 4 dimensions and beyond that just eclipse the size of My Little Pony's cosmology. Which means not just a bigger infinity, but a bigger tier of power beyond the realm of infinity with the extra dimensions. Something not mentioned at all in Skyrim vs Dark Souls, which is why I rank this one above that in terms of stomps, but I understand if you would disagree. But to me, infinite infinities within the 3rd dimension seem to not be as big as infinity in a dimension where all the 3rd dimension is akin to nothing. Anyway, number 2, Goku vs Superman. Oh, this is not going to be controversial at all, I'm sure. Goku vs Superman. Let's put it this way. Goku, right? They scaled him to infinite timelines and the crack of time beyond them. So infinity plus 1. Basically where they put Trunks. They put him really high. Superman scaled to the infinite timelines with at minimum 6 spatial dimensions plus the bleed and the sphere of gods and higher on that go beyond those dimensions. That's a whole lot of dimensions. That's roughly 9-dimensional tierings above the infinity that Goku was put at. And infinity, by the way, that was already smaller than the infinity Superman was at before the dimensions came in. A lot higher than Bill's 1 dimension above Discord and Skyrim's 0 higher dimensions above Dark Souls. And that still didn't keep the record for long, because 1 episode surpassed it. The biggest stomp we've ever had, placed higher than Superman was this guy. Let's go. Number 1, Galactus vs Unicron. How fitting is it that the current latest episode of the show is the biggest stomp? So let's be generous to Unicron. He was placed with sidebars at being a danger to 1 infinite multiverse containing 17 spatial dimensions. That's fine. That's pretty neat. Now Galactus then. Power beyond infinite multiverses, each containing infinite universes with infinite timelines across infinite spatial dimensions. Multiple levels of infinity beyond Unicron. Infinitely more multiverses, infinitely more timelines, and infinitely more spatial dimensions. With Unicron only having 1 infinite to his name, which is the smallest of those infinities, compared to Galactus's multiple layers of infinity across multiple different tiers that are infinitely beyond Unicron's highest. That's by far the biggest stomp by Death Battle's own logic we've ever gotten. Superman was at least only 9-dimensional tierings above where they put Goku. Unicron was an infinite amount of dimensions below where they put Galactus. And that's the video. Hope you enjoyed me not putting out another hour-long epic and doing something a bit shorter and quicker. Thank you for Bivid for helping out too. Go check out his content, but honestly, if you watch me, chances are you watch him too. I gotta get back to the grind.